I guess it's also good afternoon for those of you in England. My name is Jim Druckman, President and CEO of the New York Design Center, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to the third conversation in our View from the Veranda series, presented in partnership with the Horticultural Society of New York, Design Center Chelsea Harbor, and Veranda Magazine. View from the Veranda invites experts from all over the world to share their perspectives on global design as it relates to the outdoors and the intersection of indoor-outdoor living. Today's conversation will explore the many benefits of gardening as we all continue to look for inspiration closer to home. And now, I am thrilled to introduce Steele Marcoux, editor-in-chief of Veranda Magazine and our series moderator, and my good friend Topher Delaney, lead artist and art director of Delaney Chin, and passionate gardener. Welcome, and I hope you really enjoy this.
Thank you, Jim, for that lovely introduction. And thank you to the New York Design Center and to Chelsea Harbor for hosting this conversation. And thank you to all of you for joining and for your continued support of the Horticultural Society. We are thrilled to bring to life this topic and through a series of conversations. And we're just very appreciative of your attention and your time and your support. I am Steele Marcoux. As Jim said, I'm the editor of Veranda Magazine, and I am so excited because our annual spring gardening issue is out just today. And it's a celebration of all things outdoor and beauty and connecting with nature. And we have a really great feature that we're gonna, I think, touch upon a little bit today that really gets at how connecting with the earth and how connecting with the earth through gardens specifically is so finely connected to our own sense of wellness and well-being these days, and that could not be more true. So I'm thrilled and honored today to have a fabulous panelist or conversation partner in Topher Delaney, and I've had the chance to get to know Topher over the last few weeks thanks to the introduction through Jim. And Topher is definitely one of the most creative and inspiring people I have met in the past couple of years, and I'm thrilled to have gotten to know her. She is, of course, a landscape designer, but she's also an artist, and she was raised by and around artists throughout her whole life. She ended up making her way west to Berkeley to study architecture and engineering, but as she shared with me a few weeks ago, she found that she actually had more in common with the people who were actually making things and doing the engineering themselves. So she even trained herself as a contractor for a period of time to get her start. She is now half of the brilliance behind Delaney Chin, based in Vallejo, California. And I'm just very lucky to have her with me today. And we're gonna talk about a whole lot of things and see some of their work. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Topher today. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. This is always the exciting portion of the conversation, so that we can see some slides. So Topher, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you. And I am very excited to be here. I have totally enjoyed our conversations together, Steele. And this is such an opportunity to share what we do, which is a passion of mine, to share our work. And I look at our practice as that, as a practice of service that we share with our communities, both locally and globally. So there you go.
That's so well said, and it's so inspiring. And as I told you just before we got started, I think I'm most excited about my last question for you, but I'm going to save it until we have gone through some of your work and talked about some of our other topics. So I'm going to dive in. The first question I wanted to ask you, I'm sharing, by the way, for the audience, I'm sharing slides that show examples of Topher's work, and we'll walk through those and we can ask her specific questions about what we're seeing on screen. But to kick things off, I'm going to ask kind of an overarching question that will be sort of a guidepost for this conversation, which is this. you seem to have a real knack for cultivating, a sense of create spaces in which personality and creativity really lead the design. And I'm just kind of wondering how gardens tell a story and how they reflect our values, because that seems to be really what's going on in your work.
Great question. And it's the central question to all our commissions. So when we're commissioned, we start out by giving each person who comes to us a questionnaire, and it basically grounds them in this question: where did you spend the first 6 years of your life?
Oh, I love that.
And where was your bedroom? And what was the light like? And what did you do outside? And with whom did you do it?
Mm.
And it cognitively, in child development, those first 6 years are the grounding.
Wow.
And I believe our work is to ground whoever has asked us for assistance. And that is ultimately the end goal, is that people flourish, that they do well in their lives, and they are connected to the earth and to their sequence in the earth, whatever that sequence is. So California is where we are based, is a very interesting state because it's a large state of immigration.
Mm.
So we have many, many different stories and narratives
Certainly.
that will be transliterated. And this narrative that you're looking at is a koan. The bowl is a koan. And a koan is the central issue of this garden. That was the commission.
Wow.
I was asked by this person to create a koan. And a koan is a riddle, and it is used in meditation. There is no answer. And it is to focus you. So this is a physical riddle that you are looking at.
Oh,
and the
God.
question is, where does the water go? So there's no answer in a sense, because you're the vessel, I'm the vessel. We get up in the morning and we're the vessel, we're the energy. How are we dispersing our energy every day? And then how do we regain it and keep fulfilling it and keep that flow moving? And that is a garden as well. I mean, a garden is whether it's in a pot or it's in the ground, it's being nurtured by flow, by water.
That's amazing.
Without water, no garden,
No
or, well, unless you're Roanji and you've got gravel, but that's a different story. So so this person is a Buddhist. And
I was just gonna ask, how did this person's personal experience lead you here?
So this person is looking at this bowl, the koan, and they are looking directly at it from their kitchen. So that this is what they are looking at and that's their kind of main center of their life. So it's also part of a larger garden where there's an ability to be quiet, to meditate. It's not a particularly active garden in the sense that there's a lot of different elements. It's a very contemporary, modern, simply designed garden, or apparently simply designed.
Apparently, but there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move to the next slide, is this the same space or is this a different?
This is not. This is also in San Francisco. This is a fabulous garden. This garden is part of Ansel Adams' house.
Wow.
And Ansel Adams had a home in San Francisco. And this is the garden that is directly in front of Ansel Adams' house. The family is the Winkelstein family, and Barbara is an artist and her husband is an architect. And this house, what's important about this house is there is not only the garden, but where it sits. It sits next to a park near the Pacific Ocean. And there are no fences here. So it reflects a value of generosity. These are extremely generous people. And they are people of public service, both of them, and their whole family. And so when people saunter by this house, you don't have a gate, you don't have a fence. This is the lead in. So find many people on the lawn, sitting on the little steps there, eating their lunch, because people think it's a park. They don't quite understand that it's private property. So this particular garden is interesting because of the declination of private and public.
I love that.
And there is no line here, no obvious line.
No obvious line.
Yeah. So so all of the granite comes from California, by the way. These are all the curbstones of San Francisco. So Peter is an architect and has a great love of history. So these stones are all the curbs that would have created the structure of San Francisco, the streets of San Francisco.
That's what a lovely way to incorporate sort of public history into his own garden and then share it back.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's this ode to the curb, to the step. It's directional. It's from, up to, from down to up to down, and then very simply planted with alströmerias and grasses. It's quite windy in this area, so there's a lot of movement of plant material.
So beautiful. This is a very different space.
This is the Narducci family, and they commissioned this garden. This is an interesting commission. This garden was commissioned not only as a home, but also for purposes of fundraising. And so they are very large fundraisers for health, different aspects of health. And one of the purposes that I was given was to create a garden that people could stroll through and that they could entertain in, and large groups of people. They also wanted to show farming. Tony comes from New Jersey, and his background is truck farming. And so it was this ode to history, to where they come from. Susie's family is from the South. Her father was the head lawyer for Cesar Chavez. And so there's this whole relationship to agriculture. There are 350 fruit trees here. This is a certified organic farm.
Wow.
And this is a very interesting economic model, because I proposed the idea that they joint venture with a local farmer. This is in the Napa Valley. This is about 5 minutes from downtown, 10 minutes from downtown. It is 11 acres. It is a dry farming condition here. There's, and these were all planted as little tiny trees. This is 2 years, 3 years out. And enormous growth. We use fish guts and everything here. But to the point here, the person who's caring for this is a man called Steve Mathiasen. And this is a joint venture. This is 11 acres. This takes a lot of work, which translates into, quite frankly, a lot of money. And that in a daily basis of caring for a large piece of property. Their relationship to Steve Mathiasen is the following. They planted everything. They took care of the costs of the development. Steve Mathiasen took this over. He now maintains it, and he takes all the fruit and takes it to market. The market is 5 minutes, 10 minutes away. All the restaurants that he serves, he has a fantastic vineyard. He serves all of these these restaurants when you're serving them. Right now, not so much, but it's a joint venture with someone who has a large piece of land in a downtown area, so that we have rare heirloom fruits that you will never see in a market because of the thin skin. In markets, you do not receive or can select fruit that has thin skin because it bruises, and no one will buy bruised fruit.
Right.
So this is what you have in Napa is an extraordinarily rare index of heirloom fruit that you just don't find. And this is their generosity. They're both extremely generous people. And they've taken their success in life and transformed it into this garden.
It's really incredible. And you started out and you mentioned that they also bring people in. I mean, they'll allow people to. That's really incredible.
Well, it's you know, it's the purpose is for fundraising, and so that people are coming to a real. Susie got the certification for organic, so she's the one who got it.
Got it.
And so there's a real marriage here between ourselves and, you know, the families we're working with. The lower image is a piece of sculpture that I did that is part of a larger series called Genesis on the Rocks. This is day one, and this is the light, and this is lit at night. It's all made with bamboo and it rotates around.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's all gravel. As you know, we have very strict water requirements here in California. So you'll see literally there's a tiny little bit of lawn, and I mean tiny for their dog, but the major development, the terraces are all gravel. And that is to also maintain this site, but also to decrease the water. Amazing. So you've got that. You've got cutting gardens here. You've got large cutting gardens sitting in the orchards. Bache.
This is part of the same.
All part of the same garden. Oh, that's correct.
Fabulous. I mean, a dinner here would just be so magical.
Thank you. It's really lovely, and this extends from the home. They had a terrific architect, Rican Weiss, who did the house, and just a great piece. What you're seeing here is the rose garden, and that's I think about 200 roses we have, and they're sequenced in color. So what you're seeing on the image here of those colored dots are actually the roses. So they're going from red to white. And amazing. They're going, and Susie does the maintenance of the garden herself.
Wow.
So
that's incredible.
This is her area. This is her cutting. These corten walls structure the garden. So there was a conversation early on, should we do this? Should we not do this? And I said, really, it's essential you do it to give structure to the roses. And also, they don't look so great in certain times of the year. So that those walls will form a beautiful maze. So this is a rose maze.
I love it.
Yeah.
This might be, I'm making notes, but this might be a good time to ask you one of my next questions, which is about control. You and I kind of talked about this. And, you know, I think especially over the last 12 months, but really off and on throughout our history, we've experienced these times where, you know, the greater world around us feels completely out of control. And so we seize control of what we can, which might be planting a seed. It might be as small and as simple as that, but that's something that we know if we do this and we take these certain steps, a result will happen that we can predict, right? But then at the same time, a garden, I can think of no better place than a garden to reinforce that earth and nature, the kind of wildness of nature. And that may in fact lead us back around to losing our sense of control in a way that could be perhaps comforting. But anyway, I wanted to ask you to speak about, our relationship with control, especially in a garden setting.
Well, that's a great question. Because I grew up, I'm one of those sort of loved university, sort of brought up with the idea that we were going to control life.
Right.
So let's put it that
follow a certain path.
We're going to follow a path, and we're just going to go from step to step to step to step, and gosh, golly gee, there we will be in control. So I thought that was a bad idea. And I because that took away curiosity.
Yeah.
For me. So control sort of diminished what could happen. It's like a science experiment.
Totally.
Life is an experiment. So and this leads to art, to where I think gardens are, for me personally, just the most joyous, incredible art form. And because you have to make peace with process. And if you cannot make peace with process, really gardens aren't for you. And so so this brings me to art. So if I'm an artist, and I'm like this piece behind me, and I create something, it's generally a done deal. It's sort of like the painting, the
here it is,
rail piece, the sculpture, whatever it is, the piece of steel, whatever. Gardens are not going to do that. You are going to create something together. You are going to put something, a plant, a wall, and then it's going to rain, and then things are going to happen, and then it's not going to rain, and things are going to happen, and then there's going to be an animal that comes in, and then there's going to be. You are totally, ultimately out of control. So, and all that you want to do is to balance yourself with process, with change and transformation. Gardens to me are the ultimate form of meditation and transformation.
I love that.
And it's frustrating, no question about it. Monkey mind, very busy, but it can also be very quiet and compelling. Just looking at a hummingbird, or looking at a flower opening, and you're thinking, oh my God, I planted that. Yikes.
I love
and so, as I was sharing with you earlier, when you go to I've heard this many times. I'll be in a nursery and someone's got a little tree this big, and it's whatever it is, it's a maple tree. And they say, oh, we can't plant it here because there's too much shade. And I'm like, too much shade? The thing is like 6 inches tall, so, but they're in process. They're, somehow they've got this tree 40 feet tall.
Right.
Because they see life as process, not product.
Yes.
And that is really what is extraordinary about gardens, are that they are process. And the most interesting ones to me are process. When you see seasons, and you see whatever the tree is, a maple or grounds. Or I do have a funny story about this though. You want to hear it?
I want to hear it. Your stories are the greatest.
Okay.
I'm just kind of flipping the slides. Oh, well, let's save that one. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, let's save that. So this one is, I'm working with this gentleman, and he's like really very avid in the process idea. And we talk about Gertrude Jekyll and Edna Walling. And we're just talking about all these people who plant gardens and perennial gardens. And he's going to have a perennial English garden, and he's studying this, and he's from the Midwest, so he loves transition and he loves change. And he says, I'm going to go to England. I said, oh, well, Gary, it's wintertime now. And he said, no, 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 no. I'm going to go and study. I'm going to study the plants there. I said, okay.
How about it?
So he goes to all these sites. He comes back and he said, I'm going to do this on my own. I said, okay, all right, great, great, great. So he comes back and he's in California and he comes back and he says, Topher, I want to tell you how disappointing England is. I said, why? It's like extraordinary. He said, do you know they have let their plants die? I said, what? And he said, there are no plants out there. There are no flowers. I said, Gary, how often have we talked about this? These are perennial gardens. They come up, they go down. They come up, they go down. And he was
hilarious.
Like, and he's a fantastic scientist, bright guy. I mean, I just couldn't understand how he couldn't see this. But anyway.
And you tried to warn him. You said, it's winter. You go if you want, but it's winter.
He also did saw down his maple tree because he said it was dead. But it was, I mean, it was just, yeah, it was, I mean, it's hard to imagine someone do this, but it's also knowledge. So gardens are also a very important book of knowledge. And they really are our texts, and they tell us about the indexes of life, chapter 1 to an endless, no ending chapter.
Yeah, that's so true.
They really are the book of life. And I shared this with Gary, and he said, you can tell that story. It's kind of funny.
I give you permission. Well, your story about Gary, and then moving to this slide, makes me remember another thing that we've talked about, which is this seriousness and this earnestness that you've seen in your clients, especially recently. And it sounds like Gary is this way.
Oh yeah.
He's thinking and he's mulling it over, and all this. And yet at the same time, as I think is probably illustrated by these photos, your spaces are so full of joy. And there's something that's just sort of inherently joyful about a garden as well. And I love kind of thinking about the contrast of, or maybe it's not a contrast, but the seriousness and the earnestness which we bring to our spaces. And yet what we're trying to do is really cultivate this sense of joy. And I don't know, I wondered if you could maybe elaborate on that for us a little bit.
Well, this is an interesting garden here. I'm going to go back to the art and joy together. Perfect. Here. So this wall, these folks have a very good collection of modern art, and they're knowledgeable, as am I. So together, this is based on color field painting. So this would be painting from the 60s and 70s, a whole school of painting that if you looked at this and then you looked at color field, you'd see the connections. I think my biggest question is, why don't we take what we perceive as product art and translate and integrate that art into our gardens rather than a piece of sculpture? I know this is a fun thing and there are lots of sculpture gardens, but they're very static. It's sort of like, and here we have the X piece, and then we have the Y piece, and then the Z piece. And I have a call for integration here with art, and where this is a concrete retaining wall for good reasons. And also it goes retaining to boundary definition. And I'm using the colors of the garden in this. So we're actually painting this, the wall, it's Fine Paints of Europe, by the way.
Oh.
And we're painting this wall to reflect all the colors and tones that we've found in the garden. And there, a great deal of them. this looks right on to a beautiful entry into this home. And here is the joy. The joy are these foxgloves that they're coming up. You know, this is a perennial garden in the entrance. And so in the winter, it sets down and it's quiet. And then in the spring, unbelievably, these green shoots come up. I mean, you're like bulbs and you're like, oh my God, look at that. And, you know, some you're not so happy with, and that's in quote, a weed, and some you're happy with. But there is this extraordinary sense that our life is whole, that there's a cycle, that we're part of something larger than our just our daily routine. And when we are part of something larger, I think it gives us comfort. If we're isolated and by ourselves, that's difficult. That can be quite difficult. So the joy is community. It's the community of growth. It's the community of intention. It's or attention. It's being engaged in life. When we're not engaged, and that's what people are doing during this time of COVID, they're engaging. They're going out and you know, putting things in planters, and they're visiting, you know, looking at neighbors. They can't go there, but they look at them. You know, they're very excited about connecting and engaging.
I love that. I love that. This wall is incredible. This would make me so happy to see this.
Well, this is a very, you know, comme il faut. It's a kind of, it's a wall, you know, but the garden is, so that is a product.
Right.
You have product and process together.
Product and process together.
You have a marriage here.
Yeah.
So you have that, and then you have these beautiful gates that, you know, are from Hungary that have been, you know, redone and brought back, and the scale is great. So there's scale also in the work. So gardens are, for me, also about scale. You're working different types of scales. They're not, you know, they could be big lines, they could be little lines, they can be big flowers, little flowers.
It sort of reminds me of like a selvage edge of a fabric, especially when you mentioned that it was all the tones you saw in the garden. It's sort of like, I don't know, but blown up on a large scale, which is so cool.
I love this idea of the connection to fabric, because you know, a garden is fabric. I mean, it's really, you know, isn't it? I mean, it's this sort of weaving of the warp and the weft. It's very interesting of what you're going to create. I mean, it's like the tapestries, the tree of life, the Persian tapestries. Those are the gardens of life. Totally. You know, we walk on them. They're inside. So really, it's a beautiful connection. That's lovely. Thank you.
Okay, so where are we here?
Also in California here. This is what I do love about this particular location. It's a Mediterranean location, is that it's a 24/7 cycle life. I love snow, but I love the fact that we can be creating all year here.
Yeah, that is nice.
And also, my background is I am a French speaker, and my family is French. And we're from Morocco and from Rabat. And so my mother is, and my father's from basically England. But it's, I grew up with this kind of connection to this type of climate. I like it very much. So this is a poem, again, integrating process, code, and code. I'll go into codes. I work a great deal in code. And what I mean by that is that I see the garden as a code. So when someone says, oh, look at these camellias, they're such wonderful plants. And then they'll see, and okay, I don't know why they're such wonder. Is it English trade with China? I'm not really clear on why they're so important, but they are. And then someone will say, and we did a garden for University of California, a medicinal garden, and we planted a lot of Opuntia, Nepalese cactus. And they said, oh, well, that's kind of a border plant. I was like, border plant? What's a border plant? And they said, well, you know, it's kind of an immigrant plant. I said, immigrant plant? Why? And they said, oh, because Mexicans bring it from Mexico. You know, you kind of keep asking these questions and what are you talking about? And they said,
Fascinating.
well, you know, because when you go to people who are Mexican, they have these plants. I said, well, it's not a border plant. This is botany. This is horticulture.
Right.
It's no different than taking a plant from China and bringing it to your home and taking a plant from Middle America
Right.
and bringing it up. And in fact, this cactus you're talking about is fantastic because it's used for diabetes.
Yes.
And it's actually important medicinal value. So I have digressed a little bit, but back to the code here. So we live in codes, you know, whether, you know, whatever you wear, whatever, you know, it's sort of that's why fashion is fashion. And
right. You're sort of representing who you are in a code or something.
Right. You know, you sort of, you know, why do you own a Birkin bag? I mean, really? It's a bag. Why do you need this? Why can't you just have a tote? You know, I mean, because you're kind of telescoping something and it's a code. So my mother was a code breaker. So in the war. So I love codes. I've grown up with them. And this is a poem. This is in Braille here. And it's a Christopher Marlowe poem. And it is this family has, one of the family members has selected this poem, not written this, for the other. And it's about their love and affection for each other.
Wow. So
every time you walk down this path, then you are walking down a poem of affection and love. And it's in an area we have a lot of deer and animals in this part of California. So all these plants are, in quote, resistant to deer. And so I plant in massings for care and for also just the visual simplicity of a site, because it's a very complicated site around it. Lots of hills, lots of complication with oak trees, very beautiful, very textural. So again, this will be a mark that will be left forever. In fact, this house has been sold and this path is still there.
And the path is still there. It's so personal. And yet I could imagine any owner coming in and, you know, feeling that connection, even to the previous owner who installed it and for whom it was created. It's really
it's pattern recognition. I think codes are pattern recognition. You know, you recognize an English garden or a contemporary garden or Asian garden or whatever the influence is, and you start seeing pattern. And I think instinctually people do better with grounded pattern than sort of chaotic pattern. I think it's somewhat upsetting to people ultimately, or they don't want to go outside. It's like, ooh,
right,
it's complicated, so.
And what's happening here? Because this is a pattern of a different sort.
Well, planting bulbs, seasonal pattern. So also taking bulbs that we normally, it's sort of an ode of joy to scripts that you see, like in botanical gardens, there'll be like, Vallejo, that's the town we're in. So it's spelled out in bulbs. Right. It's a very kind of, I don't know if it's an American thing, but it's all over the world. They script out their places of Washington, Birmingham,
It
you know.
marks them, kind of.
Yeah, it's a mark. It's a mark in bulbs. So it comes up. You say, "Oh, this is Birmingham. Great." You know. So this script here is the code to the spiritual.
Oh.
So it's that circle. It's the spiral.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the, you know, it's that wonderful form that you're using. So that's what this piece is about.
This is amazing.
And, you know, and it comes and it goes. So, you know, you're going to go up, you're going to go down. And also it's again, that reference of cycle of that you're in this cycle that's bigger than you are.
Yes.
You know? Yes, you have, by your gesture, created a part of that cycle. And it's going to be evident, and it's also going to not be evident.
Right.
And that is your legacy. So gardens, in a sense, are legacies. And
oh, I love that too.
But particularly the big botanical gardens, or small ones too. Berkeley, where I went to university, they have a wonderful botanical garden, and it's just extraordinary. The city, San Francisco, has a terrific botanical garden, and they are the repositories of legacies. Right. And horticultural legacies of values of people, you know, whether they were big lawns, or they were, you know, gravel paths. They're all legacies of value and value of the earth, you know.
Absolutely.
And it's very, and this is a shout out to everyone. It's really important to support these botanical legacies. Do it. Give to them, help them, volunteer, do whatever it is you can, because they really, really hold the histories and the futures of our lives. And they're wonderful places to be too. So
they really are. I think they provide communities with a lot of respite and opportunity for engagement that wouldn't otherwise exist.
And they're also free, a lot of them.
Exactly. So, yeah, there's one in my little town that's free. And I mean, again, for people who live in apartments and don't have, you know, access to a backyard or their own garden, I know it's a great place to live.
You know, the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, the Bronx, you know, it's Central Park, you know, and Central Park is in the sense of park, but it's also a repository of legacies, you know. Of civic legacies in that case. And
absolutely.
So this is we're moving on here to the next image here. This is Promised Land. This is a public, and it's interesting because we're talking about this. This is a public site here. We were retained as public artists to do this site. So the developer of this is in San Francisco. It's in a very, somewhat of a contentious area. It's called Market Street, and you've got a confluence of really destitute people and people with high net worth. They're definitely crossing the boundary. Yeah. Twitter is the building next to us. Halfway houses are half a block down. So we've got an enormous amount of confluence of use and people. Mm-hmm. So in credit, this is Crescent City is the developer here, and really credit to a man called Bruce Manine, who is one of the partners. And he chose to do this as a public park. When you have a residual amount as a developer, you can purchase a piece, generally from someone pretty well known at the time, and you put it in. And, you know, all our cities have these terrific pieces around. Or you can, and not so often is this done, or you could develop it as a plaza, a park. So you have funds, and if you give them to a public artist such as ourselves, we're going to distribute that monies into a site. So the person who's probably obviously the most clearly influential in my life is Isamu Noguchi, who was my neighbor, who was the person who told me to go to landscape architecture school because he said, they do everything. I said, what does that mean, Isamu? He said, no, they do everything. These people, they like do the site. And I said, well, they do everything. They do the terraces, they're in control of everything. I said, really? He said, yeah, he said, you should go to that school, Berkeley. I said, oh, where is that? And he said, it's in California. I said, oh my God, yeah, of course. So I was from New York. What did I know? And so, but I learned a lot more. So, Isamu did and my mother photographed his work. Went to the islands, was very close to him. And so his islands are in Japan. And it's well worth going to if you're in Japan to go to see his studio. So, and he has a museum in New York, in Queens. So the point of this that I learned from him was this whole integration in a site of the art, both as product and process. So this is called Promised Land. And I researched the values in public work of what is the value of this commissioning agent. And the value is that this is their promised land. They're building this, quite large building, and this is their promised land, but California is a promised land.
That's
And
the ultimate.
I well said. Yeah, I think it is the ultimate. And for many people, they came for their fortunes. So on the text, what you're looking at here are the maps of the Sacramento River from 1857, and they're etched in the walkways. The site is developed diagonally. So I wanted people to be able to crosswalk, which they absolutely do. And so the crosswalk here, what you're seeing is this delta, and also education. Where is Sacramento? California's wealth, and particularly San Francisco's wealth, was built on their water locations, where it's a port. It's cities were built on rivers. Why are they important? They're because of their physical location, which is a garden, of course.
Of course.
And so all the walls are canted back. Cold Spring granite is the source of all this granite, but the granite comes from California. The source is the Sierra foothills. And all of this references the state of California. The bonsais are extremely important here because they reference the Japanese culture here. And the Japanese, as we know, have a very difficult relationship with California. And because of the internments during the war, as we know, their life was basically taken from them. And when they returned, many Japanese people became gardeners.
Interesting.
And so you see, particularly in the area we're in, these bonsais, these extraordinary bonsais. Well, why is this? Because that was a point of entry back into culture, was to become a gardener. So so you have this repository of beautiful horticulture, of a wonderful Japanese garden here. And it's because of a tragic legacy. These also refer to a more uplifting legacy, which is the San Francisco exposition, in which black pines were brought in to represent Japan. at the turn of the century here in San Francisco at the Palace of Fine Arts. So these reference the history of Japan and how proud that culture, and they should be, of this extraordinary tradition of gardening. And so that's the reference there.
And there's a really interesting sort of shot of the trees, but
yeah, that's a red pine. You know, it's really interesting. Oh, and then the plinths, if we go back to those tall stone pieces right there, they're two monoliths that hold the space, and it's quite a windy site. It's been a challenge as a site. And oh, that wind. So on the face of them are in barcode are the words promised land. And then they're written in gold on the seats. So as I said, this is next to Twitter. This is the internet area. So everything is in code. All these lines are going back and forth. But the plinths are also code. They're code for the earth. I mean, these are monumental, wonderful sites.
Sorry.
You know that sound.
That's my dog barking at someone who's at the door. But we're gonna ignore that.
So if we move on to the next one here, so again, the reflection of California to the different types of plant material that we have here, from the pines to the agaves, also just sculpturally beautiful forms. This is an area, as I said, that has an enormous amount of homeless basically here. So the barrel cactus are stolen. Oh, what would you say? Once a month, my partner's sitting.
Oh my gosh.
You know, so people, how can you steal a barrel cactus? I don't know. I guess you can.
How do you take a, that's crazy.
But anyway, they come in and they go out, and but it's also to show formal structures of plants, how extraordinary they are and how beautiful they are individually. And that's a nice thing. The circle in the granite is for people to tie up their dogs, so they can just leave their dogs. This is a dog-friendly building. They probably have 3,000 dogs in there, which is quite exciting.
Very
exciting. The next images here are a winery. This is a large site in Northern California. Again, integrating art and planting. This is a sign that we've done on the left-hand side, that the bottle is reflecting the winery. So the contents of the mirror that as you pass by are the vineyards, and you're looking at the rows of vineyards as you drive in that bottle. So it's this idea that you're referencing very specifically and not specifically the site. You're kind of going both ways. You know, you're sort of controlling and not controlling. This is a fire area. We've had enormously significant fires this year. The fires came within the ridge. If you see on this building, the ridge, the fires were there. And so a lot of in fact, all the work that we do is very cognizant of that. So there's you work for probably the eventual fire that will come. It's at that level now. We've used those stones for that reason, but also for textural reasons. These are all quarries that are very close to this particular winery. We're using scale here and form, so that you can really see, again, the horticultural aspects of this plant material.
When you do that, when you kind of separate them, I love that you're right. You're able to appreciate them as single you know,
yeah, you're trying to, big site. This is, so we're commissioned as, in quote, artists and gardeners. I personally think we're the same thing, but okay, we're both. But this is the entrance, and this is the Circles of Enlightenment. And these are all lit with crystals. So in the circles, those big circles there are crystals. One thing I should say is that we do build our own work. We have never stopped being builders. So
that's incredible.
Everything that you see, an artist builds their own work generally. And if, there are obviously some larger pieces or castings. We don't do casting. We don't do bronze casting, but we do in-house mostly our own work. And we work with specialists who are outside of our studio, who have their own specialists, being a painter, powder coaters, concrete core drillers. We do the masonry ourselves. So masonry we would handle, and also planting and generally irrigation will do. And all the steel, we'll do most of the Corten steel. We use a lot of Corten.
Yeah.
So that's
as you know, I've said, the last question I'm definitely going to make sure I've managed to squeeze in time for, but you've kind of led me right to it, which is, do you see yourself as a garden designer and artist, or is it something else? Because your website, if you go to your website and you read about Delaney and Chin's sort of philosophy, you end with another word that I think is very appropriate, which is optimist.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
I thought, oh gosh, is that what Topher is? But I don't know. I think there's just something interesting. You're hard to define in the most beautiful way, and your work is hard to define in that way as well.
Okay, so I think we're optimists. We're also chroniclers. I feel that I'm a chronicler.
Yeah, you absolutely are.
And I think artists are chroniclers. We chronicle, we're both in society, we are of society, and we're out of society too. So one of the reasons, let me back out of this whole situation here a little bit. So to just sort of state the background. So my brother's godfather is Marcel Duchamp. That's who we spent our summers with. That's who we lived with, in the Gucci. So all of these people, Rauschenberg, I know all of these people, and I grew up with them. So I would sit at the table, as a kid, and listening, and their complaint was in their tethering to the gallery system. And also there was another aspect. I'm a woman. I'm, of an age where, when I said to my mother, I said, I don't want to be a doctor. I actually want to be an artist. My mother was like, oh no, enfin, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. Your life is ruined. It's
that's it.
Well, but what she was talking about was there was very little access, and I believe still to some degree, there was very little access for women and to do, significant work. There's certainly, a handful. A handful is a ridiculous number. That's not enough.
That's not enough.
That's just not enough. So it, and it was Isamo and being around Isamo that he said, really, you have to go into a métier that you're out of the gallery world, the trade. So it's a trade, it's a trade.
Right.
It's a good trade, but it's somewhat of a trade. And so you buy something, you sell it. It's, you know, you have Christie's, you have Sotheby's. These are all traders, you know, and you know, they have different names, but that's the bottom line. And so I thought, Samo's right. I want to work as an artist, and this is the best field that I could imagine ever being in. And so I do in quote art. Yeah, that's true. But there was this aspect I never saw coming, which was horticulture and botany and civil engineering, you know, structural engineering. All of this is so bloody exciting. And but it's also this idea that, you know, plant people do plants and, you know,
Right.
structural people do, why?
Yeah.
What is this all about? You know, and why can't you be a polymath? Why can't you like numbers and love foxgloves? I'm sorry, why not? You know,
I love
why can't you love heliobores, snowdrops, you know,
And
dandelions, medicinal plants?
Yeah.
Why are we, you know, why are we segregating ourselves to one shot? You know,
True.
it's gardens are quite the opposite.
They are the very opposite.
I mean, you have to understand grading. You have to understand water. You have to. These are extraordinary métiers. They're great to learn. There is nothing wrong with learning them. It's curiosity, and that's what a chronicler does.
Yes. Yes.
They take their own personal, you know, curiosity, discipline, and channel it into chronicling in some way, whether like you're writing, you're chronicling, you're assembling. I'm an assembler. I'm assembling things.
I love it.
And I'm also, you know, and I can't control anything. You know that. I mean, because when I leave this beautiful installation, I'm gone.
You're right. And change is going to happen.
Absolutely. You know, some trees are going to disappear. Some, you know, gardener is going to go down and get, you know, something at Home Depot. And I'm like, oh no, you know, those were special trees, you know, but they were there, you know, so you have to let go. If you don't let go, you're cooked, you know, you're just, you know, you're a compost. So turned into compost. So,
well, Topher, I knew this was going to happen. We've almost run out of time, but I am, well, but I'm scanning the chat and the Q&A. And one question that I want to make sure that we get to, which I had wanted to ask myself, but several people have wanted to know, what are the hanging stones behind you? And are they one of your sculptures?
Okay, so let's go to the next one just to bring it up so they can see I think it's the, what's the next one?
Oh, the next slide. Okay, yeah. Let me,
oh yeah, that's a good, the next one here.
Okay.
Yeah, if you go to the next one after this one.
Okay. Oh, that is a good one.
Yeah, it's just good, you know, because it really says.
It's so good. When I saw this one, I think I saw this before you all sent it to me. I was like, I got to know more about that.
Yeah. So behind me, these are, this is Braille. Okay. And these are hanging pieces. They're suspended. And this says behind, and yes, it is one of our pieces. It says, "Let the circle be unbroken."
I love it.
And I for various reasons, I went to Baptist religious events on Sundays, and I was out in the front going like this. It was a black church, and I went every Sunday for various reasons, and so I learned spirituals, and so I have a very, very strong background in Southern spirituals.
I love it, Topher.
And I love to sing them. And I think they're great, and they're great because they unite a chorus, just like
Totally.
a garden.
Absolutely.
They're individual voices, and it's just about that, making the invisible visible through our voice. You know, it was still invisible, so, but they're words. So this is well, it's not exactly part of a commission, but it inspired a commission for guide dogs for the blind. So we were the public artists for that particular venue, which is an extraordinary venue. And they are located here in California, quite a large offering of dogs for people who are blind. And we did let's say it's about 100-foot hallway, and it was Helen Keller, and it was all suspended stones with, the stones were all donated by volunteers. There were 400 volunteers, and then we put it all together. It was great.
Incredible.
Yeah, this is actually me swimming.
Is it really?
Yeah. That's I kind of, you know, it's kind of cool. I think it's neat. It's
It's
again,
so cool.
yeah, this family, one of the members is very, very knowledgeable about gardens, and loves the history of the English garden. And so this is, we've gone round and round on this, because this garden is in California, and if you've noticed, there's quite a bit of lawn here. And they do have a well, it's true. But it's you know, when you're working, you're in partnership. You can't, if you're often as an art. Okay, so here is a division. An artist does what they want to do.
Right.
Someone who is commissioned by a person, they're in service. I am in service for that person.
Yeah.
So if that person wants lawn, and you go at it, you know, you have a discussion, but if that's really what is their relationship to the earth and their core value, then you bloody well better do it, you know,
Right.
because that you are of service. A gardener is as a person of service.
Right.
I see myself as more of a gardener and an artist, and you know, certainly I design, but it's the art of gardening is what I see.
Right.
So it's this structural pool coming out of the ground. The architect is very important here, is Forshanger, and Louis Dobday and I work together from his studio, and it's, you know, you work together as a team. This is a really nice design because there's a very wide banding around, coping around, and the birds are on that all the time. So when you look directly out of that home, there are birds chirping and doing all that kind of thing right out there. It's great.
Lovely. I think there's another, is this the same?
Yes, that's it. You can see
Right.
it. Mm-hmm. So those are the drawings that I do so I do not work on computer. I work on watercolors. So I do drawings. I was taught to draw. I like drawing. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I want to draw, and I think it's easy to draw, and I draw every day, and I'm going to continue to draw.
That's amazing.
So I think you get more, you know, I think computers are great. My partner, Calvin, is supremely good at it. But the hand, when you're drawing, the hand, really, there is this hand-mind connection, and nothing can quite take that away.
No.
So, in the lower image there, that's a nice wall there. It torques, that stone torques over.
Wow.
So that's also, being a builder, I had a different idea in mind, but as I was there, I just thought that form is in reference and respect to Bart Forshanger, the architect, and making sure that this looks somewhat seamless with his own work, and not, Toph did this and Bart did
Came in
that.
and did, right.
Yeah, no, not a good idea.
The partnership is so important.
It is. You're in partnership with everybody. And if you don't really enjoy partnerships, well, then you should try something else.
Yeah.
So it's like, and then here, I think what we're going, oh yeah, this is important work. So this is the work that we do for hospitals. And these are joyous. This is a children's hospital. And this is in San Diego. And here the commission, and you can see how important it is to this hospital, is they took out 15 parking spaces. So in order to make the garden. An important aspect of work for all of you out there is, I went to the meeting here and we were being interviewed for this project. And the funders were the grandparents. They were basically people who look like me now. And there was one person on the board who was a mother and had Sam, a son, Deborah Burt. She had a son in the hospital. And I'd say Deb was about in her 30s. And they all wanted a meditation garden. This is a cancer unit, pediatric oncology. And so we have a lot of passage, and it's very traumatic. It's very difficult. I do not have children, and that is why I probably can do this work, because it is definitely traumatic. And so at the meeting, and they are the funders, they want the Japanese garden. I said, I don't think this is a good idea. So I think these are children. These gardens are actually not for the children generally. They're for the siblings.
Oh, interesting.
Children are in the hospital.
Right. They're the family coming to visit and that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got to understand who you're doing this for.
Right.
So and sometimes people aren't giving you the right, this is for all of you out there. Sometimes they're not actually giving you the right community. They think it's the right community because it's for the sick children, but it's actually not for them. It's for the siblings.
Yeah.
So that meant that there were going to be lots of little children around. We went at it, as they say. And Deborah stood up and she said, I have a boy here. I don't want a Japanese garden. I don't want a meditation garden. I want a place that's light and joy, because I want my boy to live. I want life. I don't want this other, these are children. They're not going to meditate on anything,
And she wants reminders of life and signs of life. And
exactly. And it's also instructional. There are windmills, and there are glass blocks that are all the astronomy or astrology. They're the 12 signs in the walls. They're little fish. There's, seahorses, Martha Heavenston, a lot of different artists worked on this. And, it's important, to stand your ground if you have to. And I kind of had to here.
Yeah.
There is another aspect to this, and it's probably
I went too fast. Sorry.
It's a little bit of a daunting aspect, which is that they take children to pass out here. So when it's over, and it's over for some people, the last place they want to see their children is in a hospital room. So they pull them out and they say goodbye there. So this garden has a very, very big significance that you can't see until, you see, very grief-stricken people, saying goodbye, but they're saying goodbye in a light-filled, beautiful place. And that's their last memory, so it's, you know, I know that's hard to hear, but
No,
it's
it's such a purposeful and beautiful and meaningful place. And my God, they want to see light and color, not
yeah,
not
it's
so much restraint.
right. There are technically electrical hookups there, but it's the purpose. It doesn't happen a lot, you know,
Right.
but it's that option, and it's the reverence of life,
Totally.
and it's the lack of control.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. The
Real lack of control.
Right. Exactly.
So very important to see. I mean, it's a very structural garden, but there's an enormous lack of control here.
Yeah.
So
I'm blown away by the donors who made this possible. I mean, what an incredible
it's all done by donation, everything.
Yeah, and talk about a legacy. That's really amazing.
Yeah, and we as a studio donate also. So we did San Francisco General Hospital for Women, Breast Cancer Imaging Center with Avon. We're the funders.
That's amazing. That's really
so
amazing.
We fund, as we go through the last image is a funder. This is a funding. This is the Abramson family. So they funded this. They did lose their child. And even though they lost their child, they funded it.
That's amazing.
Because they thought the care was so great. And so this is New York City. This is a rehab roof. It's all rubber, so that the children, it's a very difficult form of cancer in the back of the neck. And so they regain their momentum. And then these are all the bridges. These are the 27 bridges of Manhattan that connect all Manhattan. There are 27 of them. So it's learning them. The children spend a lot of time there. So they look at, you know, their stories embedded in the parapet walls. And then there are lots of fishes, and you know, it's fun.
Really, look at this chess table on a cart.
Yeah, it's a fish. Thank you. It's a fish. And, you know, people play, and they have sand tables, and they have
amazing. I want to work here.
What?
I want to go here to work.
Oh yeah, it's good. It's a good, happy place to be. I mean, it's and definitely that's the focus here. I mean, you just have to. You have to you have to be an optimist here.
You have to be an optimist.
You just have to be. It's otherwise, don't bother, because it is grueling, some of this. Yeah.
Well, this is incredible work.
And then the last one, so this one is an interesting image. This we funded, and we funded the whole building. It's in a parking lot. It's a very humble site. And this is the garden of Isaac Espinoza. Isaac was 29 when he was gunned down in Bayview. And that is his badge. And this is, to my knowledge, the only garden that is in a police station.
Cool.
And this is designed because in this police station, people come into the parking lot with guns. And this is so that the walls, you can see through the walls if someone has a gun. So there are, but it doesn't look like that. The color blue is the color of protection. And that is why our policemen wear blue.
Interesting.
And it is why, as we will remember, you know, there were the brown coats, not so protection oriented.
No.
So this is all focused on creating a sanctuary for our peace officers. They have a very, very difficult job. It's a contentious job on all fronts. There's a fountain, and they said, Topher, none of that girly stuff here. I said, what's the girly stuff? And he said, no pink. I said, okay, no pink.
Okay.
Pink. I don't know why, but pink is not girly. Stop it, you know. So, but we go round back and forth. They said, well, but put some words that don't have any hierarchy on the fountain. and because we want to all be together. So it was love and gratitude on the fountain. And we grow tomatoes there. And what I'm very happy for, this is the Bayview Police Station in San Francisco.
Yeah, somebody asked where this is, but it's Bayview.
It's in Bayview. Bayview is it's a community in transition. It's into the south of San Francisco. But what is really extraordinary about this is every year in April, when Isaac was killed, they have a convocation in the parking lot. All the cars are moved on. It's a large parking lot. And they play taps, and they have a service, different denominations, and peace officers from around the world who, or not the world, sorry, but the country come to pay respects to all the downed officers.
Wow.
With one particular gun, which is the AK-47. And if you are attacked with that, you will never be able to escape. And so this is, and it's very moving. It's a way for people to come together and pay their respects because of the garden. And so it's absolutely astounding. I mean, they're all standing at attention, and there are hundreds and hundreds of these people. They just, because no one's made them a garden.
Yeah.
You know, and we did. I mean, we did because they asked us to, but we did. And that's our work. That's our practice. We're of service. You know, we create service. We are paid for service. We're of service.
I love that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the answer to the last question. What are you? You are of service.
I am of service. Yeah. I'm an optimist of service. This is,
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Topher, you have delighted us today. I mean, I think you really helped expand, especially for this group, what an outdoor space and what a garden really can be all about. And I know I feel changed forever as a result. And I'm sure
that's us. We're transformers.
Yes, exactly. Transformers. That's what you are. But I'm sure everyone else agrees. And I'm just gonna, I know we've gone over time, but if there's any last minute, like super quick questions, we could try to pop one in. But anyway, thank you so much for sharing with us. I'll stop my screen share. And what a treat on a February Tuesday. Oh, we have one more. Oh, just a comment. An absolute treat. It's been enlightening. I couldn't agree more. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Steele. It's wonderful to talk to you, and I love what you're doing. And
Oh my goodness.
Veranda is a great chronicler. I mean, it chronicles optimism.
Well, thank you. Maybe you've helped redefine our own mission. And I took lots of notes because I have lots of follow-up ideas for stories with you and your partner. So stay tuned.
We're there to be of service.
Great. Excellent. That's what I like to hear. Okay. Thanks for everybody for staying on a little long, and enjoy the rest of your week. And thank you, Topher.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
Be well. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.